Well, it's Monday, the 2nd of February 2015, and I'm down in Devon talking to Vic Nicholson. Now, Vic, as all Moulton fans will know, was the man who won more races on the Moulton than any other person, and it's about time we had an interview with him. So I'm going to start off, Vic, by saying thank you very much for inviting us here for a start. And can you tell us a little bit about where you were born and your upbringing and that sort of thing?
Well, I was born in Melksham during the war, but my home was in Corsham, on a farm in Corsham. Basically, I spent most of my life, well, till I got married, in Corsham, sort of moving around Corsham in various houses. Well, from there, when I was in Corsham was when I actually started up cycling. So I left sort of school, went on the railway, and then I had to buy a bike to cycle to work. And then just one day coming home, I happened to be overtaken by a cycling club. So then I decided, I'll catch them up. And I just chatting to them, not thinking about joining the cycling club. And then by the end of the little ride we were having, I was sort of saying, well, I'll join the cycling club. And basically that's how I started.
Right, and what club was that, Vic?
That was a Rebel Road Club, Melksham.
Ah.
That was a shoot-off from the Chippenham Wheelers. It was only a small club, probably about a dozen riders.
Right. So what year was that?
59, 1959.
And what sort of machine did you ride?
Oh, it's not a very good one. It was an OBSA 10-speed originally. It was basically just an ordinary steel...
Gas pipe frame?
Well, basically, yes, yeah.
So you got into competitive riding before you got involved with the Moulton?
Oh, yeah, I was riding mainly off and on right up until 63 when I was sort of invited to join Moultons, but only because I was a local good rider. Moulton wanted a good rider, local rider, to do some testing on the bikes.
Was that before the launch of the bike itself?
No, that was after the launch. I think they launched the bike in 62, was it?
That's right,
something
yes.
like that. But I joined the company in 63, the end of 63.
So did you have a day job with Moulton as well?
Sort of, yeah. When I joined them, first of all, like the first day I arrived, it was quite funny. I walked in, got introduced to everybody, and the first word John Benjamin said to me, he said, right now, he said, let's see if we can find you a job. so they found me a job, and I ended up as a bike mechanic.
Right, so the main reason you were there really was for the riding of the bikes, but they gave you something to do the rest of the time.
Unofficially, yeah. My official job was basically to be a bike mechanic.
Right.
To keep my amateur status. In them days, amateurs were amateurs, and if they could finally prove that you were being sponsored by any means of thing, they would then call you an independent.
Yes.
So a lot of riders and clubs were actually very cautious on how they actually, sponsor the riders. Before I joined Moulton, I was approached by a couple of clubs if I wanted to join the club, because, well, then you can ride my bike, you can ride this bike, and
right.
But yes. Because I wanted to keep local, I said, no, I just want to ride for the local clubs.
You mentioned John Benjamin there. Of course, poor John passed away very recently.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it's only in the last few weeks, in fact. But he was a real gent, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a gentleman, yeah. He was one of the best. He was, you couldn't wish for a nicer guy, and to be sort of one of your bosses, like, he was quite fair, and kept you informed, kept you straight. And like real genuine. And
he was a good sort of complement to Alex in temperament, wasn't he, really? I think very different kinds of personality.
Oh, yeah, I think they were chalk from cheese, but I think John Benjamin did control Alex quite a lot. Yeah, especially, for the work production side.
And that's a very special skill, I would suggest.
I think so, yeah, because Alec Monk could be quite funny in his way sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. He had a seat in the factory that he would sit on and watch the production line, the bikes going down the production line. Now, if he didn't like a specific item on there, he would say, stop production line, change that item, even a washer or a screw or something like that. And then he would then stop the production line, reorder whatever he wanted to put on the bike, and then start out the production line when these accessories came in.
Yeah. So a bit of a nightmare for the guys working there.
He was, especially for I mean, I always felt sorry for the guy that used to do the buy-in, because he would like say, right, we've got X number of bikes to produce with these specifications on. So he would then order in quantity the specifications. Halfway along the production, Moulton would change it. So suddenly we were left with sort of half a production line of different accessories that wasn't required.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why there are so many different variations with Moultons, I guess.
Oh yeah. He would change his mind halfway along the production line in order, we'll have this and that. Yeah.
Can you remember the first time you ever met Alex?
No, I can't. No, I think the first time I saw him was when he was pointed out to me in the when I was actually in the factory doing the inspection of the bikes. I was pointed out, that's Alex come in. But I can't remember the actual time I actually sort of officially met him. No, I can't remember.
Did he spend much time talking to the workforce, or was he reasonably aloof?
He had his favourites. He would talk to one or two, and the rest of us was like, Alex's attitude was a man is a machine. You had to perpetually do the same thing all the time. Even like whatever he was doing, I mean, he did get involved with the rowing club at one time, the Bradford-on-Avon Rowing Club, and he used to get annoyed when the guys couldn't perform the same thing every time. So
when did you first race on the Moulton?
I think it must have been 64.
Right.
I think the end of 63 I used to sort of do some few testings on them, and I think it was actually 64 when I first raced on them, as far as I can remember.
I can remember when I first came across your name, because I was a schoolboy in Reading, and by November 1964, I bought my first Moulton. I had to get to school by bike anyway. Right. There was no bus route. All weathers, I had to do it, and I had to come up a hill, lived on a hill, so that's probably why I got interested in gears. And so the Moulton was a sort of multi-role bike for me. It got me to school. It helped me deliver newspapers, and that's how I earned some money. And then with the money that I earned doing that, I was able to escape to the continent on the bike, so it was a virtuous circle, as they say. But I can remember delivering those newspapers. Every Friday we had the Berkshire Chronicle, as it was called in those days, later became the Reading Chronicle, and they had very good coverage of the racing, because Reading was one of the few towns that had a cycle racing track.
That's right, track league.
And I remember 1965, week after week, I used to see about you coming up there and blasting away on the track.
On the track, that's right. Yes. On the Reading track league.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that was quite something. I seem to remember that you used to use the acceleration of the Moulton to get in the front and then stay that way.
That's right. I found it, especially on the track, the acceleration, because of the small wheels, was quicker. You could nip on the inside because of the small wheels. You didn't have to sort of sweep round to go round the bends. You could actually just nip in between the middle. And I used to accelerate away quick and then just hold it on the front. I won quite a few events, on that.
Because that was Palmer Park, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. And I run their track league pursuit championship a couple of times as well.
On the Moulton.
On the Moulton, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing your name in the literature when the catalogue was reprinted, and they were talking about 15 major time trials in 1965.
That's right, yeah.
And you were placed in 9 others. So it was a busy year, 65.
Plus the other places that I had. I mean, we used to race over Easter. I'd ride 3 events over 3 days.
Right.
And I mean, I know one Easter, that 65 Easter, I won the Actonia one day. Oh, I know, I can't remember the other 2 now, but I know like over 3 days I won 3 events.
Gosh.
Which I was quite surprised.
And was this the Speed 6 you were riding in those days?
Well, it wasn't called the Speed 6 originally. It was just called the Moulton.
So it was a work special?
It was a work special, yeah. And then the Moulton Speed came as a sort of offshoot of the racing bike.
Right.
That's how the Speed originated.
So you would have had, single speed on the track bike, or were you on a...
No, single speed, fixed wheel.
Single fixed,
yeah.
And then for the time trials, you were, 6-speed derailleur?
Well, I started off on a 6-speed derailleur, and then we went up to 12 then we managed to...
Right. So you had the big dinner plate chain wheel.
Yeah, 68, 74. yeah. 74 was the biggest with a... we did eventually end up with a 9 sprocket. Yeah. But it was 11 sprocket with a 74.
Because Phil Uncles was involved in making those special
Phil Uncles was, he was the main developer, head of the development down there, yeah.
And that 9-tooth sprocket, that was an Alex patent, I think, for that one, because I don't think anybody at that time was making a...
No, they made that out of works.
Yes, yeah. Quite a complicated bit of geometry.
Yeah, because there wasn't a lot of meat holding it together, you know. And I know when I did break the Cardiff London record, the actual sprocket broke going through one of the villages, but when the report came out, it's like punctured, but it was actual sprocket that broke.
Well, we'll come on to that ride a little bit later. What I was going to go ask you about was for example, some of the specification details of these works bikes. Were they basically the standard frame with a bit of finishing done to them?
Yes, they were standard frame, but they put another tube down the seat tube
to brace it up.
So it wouldn't bend.
Yes.
Because the ordinary motor, and if you took the back carrier off, the tube would bend.
Yeah.
Because the struts was actually holding the frame up, and then eventually I think they altered it around again.
And then what about the suspension? Because that was always a contentious issue for racing men.
When I got on the motor first, I found the suspension was a disadvantage of just like riding a pogo stick. Every time you put pressure in your pedals, your front suspension went down. If you got out the saddle, the suspension was going up and down. So for racing wise, it was just no good at all. But Alex Moulton wouldn't accept it. He said, no, that's how I want it. So what we then devised is, when he wasn't there, there was only a couple of us who knew about it. It ended up by trying several experiments to stiffen the front spring. So eventually what we done was just got a load of washers, forced them up to compress the spring, and then put the front brake in to hold it all together.
Right.
And then that made it quite stiff.
So basically you had the preload on there, so you'd still read a bump and it would respond to a hard bump, but it wasn't going to bounce up and down.
It wasn't bouncing up and down. There was just enough movement in there to take the vibration to stop the spokes from breaking.
Because another trick that was sometimes done, I did it myself, was to just put a second abutment in there, the bottom abutment that the spring sits on.
That's right.
If you preload, you can squeeze another one in.
That's right. So we had a couple.
Loaded up by about 3/4 of an inch.
It was quite hard to get in. I mean, it was more than. I mean, when we were putting them in there, it was more than one frame we bent. Trying to force them up.
You don't want to be looking down the tube at the time.
No.
What about the rear suspension?
Well, the rear suspension, again, we had to devise that. So what we ended up with was actually putting 2 bolts and bolting and compressing the rubber together to make it permanent, so that was almost solid.
Right, so you've got two pieces of curved metal, basically, with rubber in between. So it's linking those 2 metal plates together.
Yes, that's right. And bolting it down. Yeah.
And did Alex know about that?
No. Eventually he knew about it, because what happened was, as soon as we stiffened the suspension, we got the results.
Right.
I was managing to perform a lot better, push a higher gear, and because of the smaller wheels, it allowed me to push a higher gear. So I was getting the wins and getting the places. And then the day that Alex Moulton found out that we had the suspension bodged out was because what it was, we used to have 2 bikes. One that I would ride to work, that Moulton would see each time, and one that I would keep at home. Now, the one that I kept at home was my racing bike.
Right.
He wouldn't see it.
That was a heavily doctored one.
That's right. So that was kept at home.
Right.
So one day we thought Alex was away from the factory, so I wanted some work done on my racing bike. So I brought my racing bike in. It was down in the workshop being worked on. Same time, Johnny Woodburn was down there doing some testing. Now his was stiffened as well. Now John was riding down from the hall over some cobbles, and Alex come from somewhere, from the house I think, walking up, and suddenly noticed the suspension wasn't working. So obviously Woodburn, get off that bike, something wrong with it. So he wheels the bike down to the workshop where Tom Crowder was working on my bike, and suddenly Moulton was there. Oh, hello! We didn't expect him to see him, because I was in the workshop as well. Also, Reg Randall's bike was in the workshop as well.
Yes, yeah.
Now, Reg didn't have suspension, stiffened suspension. He liked it as it was, because he was a distance rider.
Yes. Because he was doing the end.
He was training for the end-to-end.
Yes.
No, he liked the suspension because he wanted a comfortable ride, and because he was not putting any pressure and getting outside a lot, it didn't give him a disadvantage.
Yeah.
So Moulton said to Alex, to Tom Crowther, he says, I'll never forget this. Crowther, he said, there's something wrong with Butland's bike, he said. He said, look, he said, it won't work. He said, look, it should be like Nicholson's, he said. You've never used the Christian names. Should be like Nicholson's. So he gets mine off the stand, pushes mine down, thump, no movement. What's wrong with these bikes? Let's get Randall's. Of course, Reggie's was okay. Yeah. Randall's was okay. This one's okay. So anyway, and then she said, well, take it apart, let's have a look what's wrong with it, you know. So anyway, we put it on the stand. Alex was standing in front of the line of fire. Was when we took the brake out, the whole lot would shoot out. Yeah. And that's how Alex discovered it. We actually bodged up the suspension. Yeah. Because before that, we was always trying to get him to do it. Officially say, look, the suspension's no good, it's got to be stiff. Yeah. And he wouldn't accept it. As soon as he realised what we'd done, he went up in the air. Because, like, against all what he was working for. And we say to him, well, it's just like the racing Mini. Yeah. You stiffen up the racing Mini against the road Mini. Yeah. You know. Anyway, he eventually accepted it, and then he worked on a new stiffer spring so that we could actually stop bunging it up.
So the production Speed 6 had a stiffer front spring.
Stiffer front spring,
and the dampers, adjustable dampers on the
back pivot. Because of that, yeah. So once he realised what we'd actually done, and we convinced him that because I was getting the good results, that was why. Because when I first started riding the mountain bike, I wasn't getting the results. Yes. Because I was like, it was a pogo stick. Yeah. You know. And that's when it all got sort of.
That's fairly typical Alex, I think, that, you know, often he would defend his original idea very hard and be offended if anybody criticised it, but then eventually he would listen.
That's right. When you could prove, yes. But also then, to everybody, it was his idea to stiffen the spring. Of course. You know, it wasn't that, you know. But yeah, it was a bit of a uncomfortable situation at the time it was being discovered, and afterwards as well, because we were all working against his logical sort of thinking, because he was telling everybody, you know, what I was winning on was like the mountain bike, you know, the suspension was like giving me the winning. Yes. And it was a hindrance. We did try a solid suspension, front and rear, but we found because it was solid, because it's short spokes, the spokes were breaking.
Oh, right. So it needed something.
So it needed something to take the vibration, which then we worked it out. It was just enough in the front to take the vibration out. Yes. And stop the spokes from breaking.
Just want to knock the peaks off, don't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Because they built that 531 unsprung bike, didn't they? Track racing Moulton. I don't know if you ever got to ride that.
No, I didn't ride that one, no.
There is a frame, and there's been a more modern version of that just in the last year or so.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not in production, but as a design exercise.
Oh, right, yeah.
So one of the things that's particularly interesting to bicycle historians and Moulton fans in particular is the tyre issue, the tyres that were being used for racing. There were the sew-ups or tubulars on sprint rims, which were originally used, and then later Alex brought out a high-pressure tyre, 1 1/4 inch, which is nowadays called a 17 inch, and was confusingly called a 16 in those days. Yes. So which were you riding and for what purpose?
Well, training, we was using the pressures, the 17 inch for training, obviously because of the cost of the tubs. But the tubs we was actually racing on, not the pressures. Right. And I found that it was a lot more responsive riding the tubs for racing than it was the pressures.
And these tubs were made specially by Dunlop?
By Dunlop, yeah, they made specially for Dunlop,
Well, indeed, the pressures were as well, weren't they? Because Alex had a very close relationship with Dunlop.
Yeah, because sometimes as well I would actually go up to Dunlop's and do the testing of the tyres up at Dunlop's.
Tell us a bit about that, Vic. How did that work?
Well, we go up to Dunlop's, and then I would go out for riding on various treads on the Moulton, and I would then also go out with two other riders who were riding conventional bikes on the same tyre tread, but on a 27-inch wheel. Right. Just to see what comparison we were getting against the 27-inch wheel against the 16-inch wheel, 17-inch.
This would be up at Coventry, would it?
Yeah, Birmingham.
Right.
Dunlop's Birmingham, yeah.
So that was a good comparison between the standard racing bike and the Moulton. And what did you find in general with that?
I found I was at no disadvantage at all. You know, once we got the suspension sorted out, I was at no disadvantage at all. The only disadvantage I was at would be if it was wet, and then the tyres was a bit more slipperier than on the conventional bike. Time trials, it didn't make any difference because when it was wet, you were picking your own route,
right?
So you were okay.
Yes.
But when in road racing, because you were in a bunch, you was a danger because you couldn't pick your route.
Yeah.
So if it was a sharp turn, you were in trouble.
And I suppose also you would be drafting more closely on the Moulton because you would get closer.
I could
to
get
the wheel
closer.
Behind,
Yeah, that's one thing.
Aerodynamic advantage.
That's right. Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I found. But I found especially on the track, that's when I was advantaged on the track as well. Like I sort of tuck up underneath, and gain me gain from there.
Right. And with these tyre tests, were they using the Moulton at a higher pressure than the standard bike, or much the same pressures?
I think we were using much the same pressures,
right,
if I remember rightly. Pressure-wise, I wasn't involved a lot. I was just sort of, there's the bike, there's the tyre. We would take the bike in, they would fit the tyres, now go out and test them. So we go out on the test route, come back, give a report to what they were like, and then we would try another tyre out again around the test route. Right. And the test route was like a mixture of road and sort of track.
So
mud
surfaces, like sort of the more granular asphalt and
we'd have various various surfaces. We had slippery surfaces, tarmac, concrete, gravel as well. We would have as well. So quite a variation of track.
So coming back to the racing, then you mentioned briefly before the Cardiff London. Now, of course, Johnny Woodburn broke a Cardiff London record in 1962.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you did it again. Now, this was because there was a new route, wasn't it? So can you tell us a little bit about the new route and how you did it?
Well, the new route was actually using, instead of going all up through Chester and up to Gloucester and down from Gloucester, they built the new Severn Bridge. And then a chap named Brian Catt, I think he from Slough, somewhere, one of the London clubs, he actually broke the record first.
Right.
So he took it away from Alex Moulton, and then Moulton wanted the record back. So I was asked then to go to get the record back. Now this time we was using the Severn Bridge, which lessened the route by 10 miles. But it was also quite a hard section from when we left from the Severn Bridge until we got to probably the other side of Chippenham or Marlborough. It was quite a hilly road, and for several miles as well, we were quite on little lanes going from the Severn Bridge, cutting across country to get to the A4. We were sort of on narrow roads.
Because the other route used the A40.
A40, yes, But for it was probably 20 odd miles. We was on sort of B roads, little lanes, until we picked up the main A4 again at Chippenham.
What time of year was it, Vic?
It must have been September. Because about a couple of weeks before that, I actually broke the Birmingham to Bristol and back record,
right,
which was a Midlands Record Association one. And then previous to that, 5 weeks before that, I broke my collarbone. So I broke my collarbone. That was racing on the track at Leicester, not on the Moulton. And then 5 weeks, I broke the Birmingham to Bristol and back record. And then a couple of weeks after that, I then broke the Cardiff London record.
Were all these rides that year on the new S speed?
No, it was on the general standard one that I was racing on.
So I think you had the S speed for the Cardiff London one.
That's right, the S speed, I got it for the Cardiff London. That was a brand, that's right, we had it for that one. And then we had the 12 gears on that one.
And what time did you leave when you set out on the Cardiff London ride?
It was about, I'm not quite sure, it was 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. And it was chucking it down with rain. And we were in that stage, we had a crosswind as well. And it was, shall we go or shan't we go? And Dave Defo said, well, we're down here now. We've got to go home. So he said, we just as well try it. So we got to Chepstow and it just stopped raining. And the wind was still giving me a crosswind. And I was a little bit down on schedule, but we just, seeing it was on our way home, we said, well, we still keep going. So we kept going. We got to Beckhampton and the wind started to swing round a little bit then. And then we got to Beckhampton and I think I was down on schedule. And then we then picked up a little bit onto Marlborough, and then Marlborough, just outside of Marlborough, I think I picked up back on schedule. And then the wind swung round then, and then from Marlborough all the way into London we had a tailwind. And that was the only time I had a tailwind, and I just gave it welly, and it just
I suppose that's the best end of the ride to have it.
That's right. Yeah. When it was flat, and I knew the road then at the back of my hand.
Yes.
You know, because I actually raced on it, time trials and that.
Splendid.
All the way in, and we actually managed to sort of...
The old Bath Road.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. All the way in. It's only because we had the wind swung round that we could actually get the record.
Right.
You know.
So by how much roughly did you beat Cat's record on that one?
18 minutes.
18 minutes.
18 minutes, yeah. Because also I was told that when I got to Marlborough, a message came through as if I broke the record by 20 minutes, I'd be on a 10% bonus, but I didn't get it.
The Bristol-Birmingham that you've broken in August. That was quite a margin. You won on that one.
Yeah, it was quite a margin again. I broke that one.
25 minutes, something.
Because that was Birmingham to Bristol and back, and that was 25 minutes. Yeah. We had a headwind going up because what we actually done, we started at Tewkesbury, come down to Bristol, went right up to Birmingham, and come back down to Tewkesbury. So it split the wind up, so we didn't have the wind one way all the time.
Right.
You know, so we did have a split wind variation from when we were actually doing it. Yeah.
And of course, what happened about the same time that you were breaking that Cardiff-London record was that Moulton got swallowed up by Raleigh, didn't it? So I suppose that was what put the kibosh on any more racing.
Raleigh's owned it then, didn't they? 67 was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
Very much the same time.
That's right.
I think you probably broke your record just after it had been officially announced.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. But then Moulton still wanted me to go for some more records. If I would be interested, I was interested, but he wouldn't pay enough money for me to go for the record, you know.
So did you leave the Moulton organisation about that time?
Well, I left it. I finished the season out. I was contracted to finish the season out.
Yes.
And then Moulton then said, like, it was then, the contract was ceased then.
Right.
And then 68 I rode for someone else.
So as a day job as well, you went somewhere else at that stage?
Well, no. The day job, I was made redundant from Moulton's in 1965.
Oh, gosh.
About a fortnight before I was due to get married in December. So I was made redundant. So during 66, 67, I had a variation of jobs. 66, I didn't ride the Moulton. I didn't do much racing then because I had several jobs. I wasn't settled and I wasn't getting the time to do my training. And then it was back in 67 again when Moulton's got in contact with me again. 67, was I still racing? And then would I ride the bike again? And that's when I then carried on riding throughout 67.
So thereafter, you continued club cycling for a while?
Yeah, I rode for Dave Russell Cycles for a couple of years as a pro, and then I packed up pro racing then because life got a little bit too... Well, I found that cycling was taking over my life, my married life.
Yes.
I was never home, and little jobs like around the house wasn't getting done, like the garden wasn't being done, the decorating wasn't being done because I was all out training. Because in them days, you had to work as well as an independent or semi-professional as an independent. Yeah. So if you didn't train, you weren't performing so well.
Right.
So obviously, every minute I got, I was training. I was sort of going
heart and soul into it.
That's right. I was going to work during the day and then going out evenings training. And then weekends, if I wasn't racing, I was training. And meanwhile, the jobs wasn't getting done. So at 71, I decided to call it a day and then just do sort of local club runs and club races.
When I was writing my first little book on the Moulton, 81, that sort of time, seeing a picture of you in Cycling Magazine because there was some sort of a reunion. Was it Bristol South 25 winners reunion? 1981.
81, that's
and
right.
You borrowed a Moulton for that, didn't you?
Yeah, I borrowed it. Yeah, what it was then, I wasn't racing at the time then. I hadn't been racing probably for several years. And I got a phone call one day saying, we're doing this promotional event, anniversary event. Would I like to participate? And the original plan was just to start on the start line, ride down the road, and climb off the bike as a publicity do.
Right, yes.
This is what most of us was going to do. So I rung up Alec Moulton because they asked me if I could get a Moulton bike because it was a Moulton that I actually won the event on.
Of course, yes.
So I rung up Alex and they then agreed to supply me with a bike. So they had to sort of quickly turn around and make one up for me because they couldn't find my original bike. So they made one up and they delivered it to me on the Saturday night. So I didn't have time to ride it. So I just went out training, well, not training, just a little ride before the event on the Sunday morning, just before the event. So we got on the starting line, started off, think, oh, this is all right. Anyway, cut long story short, eventually we rode around the whole circuit and did a 1 hour 26 minutes. And I was certainly disgusted with the time I'd done.
Well, it was a while since you've done it.
It was a while since I'd done it, yeah.
And that was a Mark III special, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Mark III, they actually got up for me, yeah. But, you know, I was quite comfortable on it. You know, it felt as if it was like my old racing bike, you know. It was quite a nice...
slightly shorter wheelbase.
But it's quite a nice one to ride around on, you know.
Yeah. So that was really the end of your Moulton involvement.
That's right, really, yes.
Then you went on to a career in local newspapers.
I joined a local newspaper then as their sort of sales manager for newspaper sales, you know, and I was there for 14, 15 years before I was redundant from there.
Right.
You know, because they amalgamated with another newspaper, and suddenly there was 2 managers. Unfortunately, one had to go. So,
fascinating. And then more recently, you moved down from Wiltshire to Devon.
Yeah, we moved down. Yeah, we had. When I left the newspaper, I had a couple of jobs then, and then after about 12 months, I then sort of decided, right, I'll go self-employed. And I was a photographer then for about another 14 years. And then we then decided to actually, when I got 60, we actually was basically forced to come to downsize our house. So then we decided, well, do I have to stay in Corsham, in Melksham? So then we decided, well, we look round and come down to Devon, you know. Right. So we just moved down here.
Well, it's a very nice part of the world.
It's beautiful, yeah. I mean, I'm 8 miles from the sea.
Yes.
You know, so it's a very nice.
And lovely countryside around us.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, Honiton's quite central for, like, most of the sort of, you know, East Coast, right the way down. It's quite a nice situation, nice position to be in.
Well, Vic, thank you very much for inviting me to your home today and for sharing your reminiscences of
you're welcome.
the Moulton days.
Nice for you to come down and see you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
That's right.
Thanks.